Hey, so Nick, here we are launching our first streaming event for the new Ham Radio Takeaways show. And first off, I just want to say it's a pleasure to join forces with you on co-hosting this, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, so we've got a great lineup of a whole range of topics to talk about, but I wanted to just begin by saying what a little bit from my perspective on what we hope for in this show, and hear your thoughts as well. So we put our heads together on this in part because we felt like this could be a way for us to design a show that over time, as we learn how to do what we do better, we learn as we go, which is true for the amateur radio hobby, not just of live streaming. But anyway, that as we get better at doing what we do with our show, uh, we'll have an opportunity to meet people where they're at in terms of either what they're interested in, but also what they may be wanting to learn more about. And this could therefore be worthwhile not just for newbies to the hobby, but even those that have been around in the amateur radio world for many, many years, but for whatever reason, either may want some refreshment on what they know about a particular mode or technology or whatever, or maybe they have been doing what they're doing for so long that it's been the same thing, and there are now new aspects of the hobby that they just haven't learned much about. So this, our ham radio takeaway show is really an idea around how can we meet the needs of a broader spectrum of radio ops rather than a show that is just focusing on newbies that are starting out, or a show that is assuming right out of the box that the audience is of people that already know a lot about what they're doing. And so, we're trying to thread that needle a little bit with each of our segments. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll have you share a few thoughts, is that I've been licensed for now 30, 33, I don't even 30 some odd years, and so I bring a breadth and depth of experience that I hope will offer some added perspective or some added context to the various features to our show. And you, as a relative newcomer to the amateur radio world, you also, in a very valuable way, will bring useful context, despite the fact that you're new to the game.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I've had my license for less than a year, so I'm still, I'm still drinking from the fire hose, which is awesome. I love it. It's super exciting. I'm really glad to be part of this hobby, and so I'm sure as we go along, with guests and training segments and news and events and things like that, I'm going to have lots of questions. Oh, what is
Right.
this? Oh, when you say, like, I don't even know what a DXpedition is. Like, I mean, these things. I'm going to have a lot of these kinds of questions. So, that's obviously useful to me. I hope it's also useful to the viewers who might be also asking some of these questions. And that's the great thing about this hobby is even people that have been in the hobby for 30 years, they probably still have questions too. So I
Totally.
get to be the new guy in the room and ask some of those questions.
Absolutely. And I'm expecting to also learn a lot and, have questions for whatever reason from whatever direction. And so should be great. Uh, I did not actually introduce myself in that my name is Jonathan. My call is Kilo 7 Papa Whiskey phonetically. And like Nick, I'm an extra class operator. And my journey in amateur radio began many years ago as a novice operator that I may have actually tested all the way through general right out of the box. I don't remember. I don't know if I was a novice first, but shortly after earning my novice license back in the day, then I earned my general at 13 words per minute. At the time, there was still a 13 words per minute Morse code test requirement. And then not long after that, I earned my advanced class license. So we may know now that both the novice and the advanced class licenses are no longer uh, offered as license classes. But people will still bump into or make contact with ops that are novices or advanced class holders. It's not to say they don't exist. It's just those licenses aren't offered by the FCC any longer. And then back in 2010, it was 2010. That's when I earned my extra class, and I decided that I actually did want that little bit of extra HF space, elbow room to play in. So those extra privileges really helped. So, and Nick, what was your journey getting your, and maybe introduce your call?
Yeah. So I'm Nick, Kilo 7 Lima Zulu Mike. I stumbled into the hobby because I was interested in drones, and I kept getting these pop-ups whenever I was buying drone equipment that said, "Oh, you need to have an amateur radio license to buy this piece of equipment."
Wow.
And I looked into it, and it seemed great. And then I showed up at one of the Elmer breakfasts that our local club runs, and it just seemed like it was totally up my alley. And so I got my tech license, in the spring of last year, and 6 months later, I got my general and amateur extra license, and a lot of fun, a lot of classes, a lot of things like that. So that's been my journey.
That's
Yeah,
great. Well, congrats on achieving in a relatively quick period of time all of that and getting into your extra. And it's for me anyway. It's in part a demonstration of how it's possible. You know, not to imply that if you can do it, anybody can do it. It's not that as much as that it is. With classes and with training and friendships and learning from others, you can really move. You can progress that
that
way.
and
So
hamstudy.org.
yes,
Those
hamstudy.org.
flashcards, they work pretty
Right.
well.
Okay. Well, so we'll have opportunity. I'll say that the format of our program here is intended to be a once per month stream, and right now we're aiming at on or around the first Friday or first weekend of the month, and uh, we will have both live as well as pre-recorded segments so that we can easily have or more easily have guests join us for particular segments. And we've just found that it's easier to meet with them whenever their schedules allow and record and then just insert those recorded segments into this live stream. So we're we're going to be introducing different topics and subjects and sometimes doing that live and sometimes using recorded material. And let's see, so once a month, and we so we've got a good show lined up this time around. It's our first one, and we will certainly in the coming months introduce perhaps some other not just features but a look and feel about our program as we decide to do things a little differently going forward. So this first segment is us introducing a couple of topics or just highlights that we want to share. If it were next month already, it would be some things that just caught our attention that we want to now bring to the foreground here and talk about. But this being our first show, this was just sort of us doing a little bit of background research and, getting ready for this first segment. So for me, this first one is what I'm going to refer to as QSL Quickies. And I'm hoping that this might be something that we do routinely. And basically what I've done is I'll identify a couple of QSL cards and then use them just as a way of talking about why I thought they might be worthwhile to share. So a QSL card is sort of like a postcard that ham radio ops use to send to each other to confirm a contact that they've had with each other. Now, currently, while there are still gazillions of QSL cards that are sent around in the snail mail to everybody, there are electronic formats of QSL confirmations that are now very popular as well. So Logbook of the World and EQSL and other engines of sorts. We'll talk about those in future episodes. But what I wanted to do was stay true, at least for a short period of time, to the historically significant paper copy, hard copy QSL cards. So I found two of them this past month. I received two QSL cards that confirm contacts that I made with two interesting island locations around the world. So these are contacts that I made by HF radio contact using HF frequencies. And I think they were both on 20 meters. I think I'll look. One of which was CW using Morse code. And then the other was a USB or upper sideband voice communication. And I actually enjoy all various types of modes to make contacts. But in this case, CW is used in part because, the first one I'll show you, make sure this is the CW, this is the USB. So the first one I'm going to show you is, I'm going to hold this up to the camera and hopefully that shows up well. Is that showing up well enough?
Yeah, that looks good.
So I made contact with the Cocos Keeling Islands in the off the west coast of Indonesia, 9,000 miles away. So Nick is bringing up a map of where that's located. You can see it down in the bottom left corner there. 9,000 miles from Seattle by way of CW Morse code. And the benefit of doing that in Morse code in part was that the conditions at the time, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head now, but I'm just going to assume that there was a fair degree of atmospheric noise, probably what's referred to as QSB or signal fading in and out, or let's just say so many operators trying to work that island that there was a pileup and that the operator on island was just doing the best they could to try to manage the onslaught of everybody calling for him. So fortunately, my CW signal made it. We exchanged confirmations, probably a signal report 599 and sent 73 best wishes in Morse code. Just a very basic, quick confirmation that, yep, they heard me and I heard them. And then a month later, QSL card arrives in the mail. And it confirms that we. So anyway, there's that one.
What
and then
band was that on?
That one was 20 meters CW.
Wow.
On December 1st of 2023.
Nice. And what you said? Did you say that the signal report that you got was 5.9?
Yeah, 599,
wow.
Which is a strength and readability and clarity indication, which is pretty standard. I mean, these days it does seem as if the DXpedition operators are actually offering more accurate reporting statements. So 599 is often the default. And if they're in a real rush, they won't actually say to you what they're really hearing. Because if the conditions are really difficult and truly the signal report ought to have been a 529, meaning that the strength of the signal was really weak, well, that would suggest that it might be actually very difficult for me to understand the number 2 at such a distance. And if that were the case, I would be sending back a question mark, did it da da, did it, over and over and over again, which wastes time on their end because they're working a pile up. So to avoid that back and forth just for a number, a 599 gets the job done. And I can look at my own meter, my strength meter, and probably have an idea as to how well they're hearing me or how well I'm hearing them accordingly. So
I bet we
so
could
you'll
do
often
a
just
whole
get,
segment on signal reports,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So here's the second one I'm going to show you. And this one is in the opposite direction. This is Victor Papa 8, Kilo Charlie Alpha, the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic. So Nick will bring up a map that shows where this is. Now, the Falklands are in somewhat of an opposite direction, 8,000 miles from, about 7,700 miles from Seattle. And equally challenging, crossing the equator, going through what could be a whole host of different types of atmospheric noise. But the thing about this is that this was not by CW, this was by voice, by upper sideband, single sideband. So on 20 meters. And I remember this was on April, this was in April of last year. So this was a bit earlier than my contact with the South Pacific. And I remember this is a British fellow who works in the British military and is on the base there and gets on the air periodically. And I saw him spotted a couple of times using a spotting program, which we'll talk about, another topic that we'll bring up in the future. But it's a web-based browser, and if not a program, that will indicate who is hearing this station, this Victor Papa 8 station, and makes a spot that goes across the internet, and anybody who is monitoring that page or that program will see that a Victor Papa 8 is on the air right now. And depending on the program that you're using, it may indicate for me if I've worked that person or not. There may be a little graphical color or something that says, you need that country or that contact on that band, whatever. So sure enough, I think I had worked Falklands years ago, but not on 20 or maybe not on sideband. And so I went to that frequency, and sure enough, he was loud. And I think I was running maybe 700 watts at the time. So I was putting out a little bit of power. And he heard me. So fast forward, I got that card. Maybe I got it in November or something. It took some time because you have to send it to his home through the mail in England. You don't send it to Falkland Islands. So then periodically he checks his mail or has somebody check his mail in England. Anyway, there's some logistics about getting the QSL cards for him while he's at the Falklands, and it takes some time. So you may make a contact and it may take 6 months for you to actually receive the postcard QSL
Wow.
card. Yeah. So, but those are two, and I'll share a couple of QSL card quickies in the coming shows, and I am hoping that we'll have some other guests that join us that they too will be able to share part of their collections of QSL cards, and you will be growing your collection of QSL cards, no doubt.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's what I had to share. What do you have to share as your contribution
Yeah.
this time?
Well, I watch a lot of YouTube, and I saw this really neat video. This guy actually he built a repeater um, out of a pair of UV5 Baofeng UV5Rs. Let me see if I can
Hmm.
pull up. Yeah, here. Right. So he was just using the same Baofeng that every new ham gets,
Hmm.
and he plugs them together. He's got like a this. Let's see if I can find it. He's got this little device. Yeah, this guy. So this little box here that he's showing, this thing is it's a repeater box that it does the same thing that you would expect a fancy expensive repeater to do, but he just plugs two Baofangs into it and then it operates as a repeater. And so he carries this thing up onto the top of a mountain and he straps it into a tree. Just he's got a padlock here that he padlocks it to the tree at the top of the mountain. He leaves a little note that says, "Hey, this is my call sign. This is a repeater box. I'm going to come back on this date and pick it up." And he just leaves it there for a couple days on a summit, and while he's camping or whatever he's doing on the mountain. And I just thought it was so cool that he just, he threw it. Like he said, it's $100 lunchbox, right? So
Right.
it's $100 of equipment, including the hard case, and those hard cases are not cheap, right?
Right.
And so he's just able to put together this repeater, cobble it together out of some pieces that he finds on the internet, and he's got himself a little repeater station. And I thought that was so cool. This is what I love about the
That is
hobby.
cool. Yeah. So why would somebody want to create this repeater box? What purpose or benefit does it serve?
I I don't know exactly what this guy's motivation is. I mean, he
Mhm.
says that he takes it on a camping trip, throws it up there. It's just a way for him to have a presence on the air. He's got a friend in town, where down at the base of the mountain that he talks to using this repeater, and it's just a way for him to have a presence on the air. I'm not sure
Yeah.
beyond that.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons why I was asking that was my hunch is that given the relatively short range functionality of these Baofeng HTs, just because FM transceivers are often limited by mountains and obstacles, physical obstacles, that it could actually be very helpful to deploy your own repeater in order to give you, you know, uh, an immediate longer range accessibility and
Yeah,
usefulness. So
and he
yeah,
says, he's got this repeater that's just two Baofangs, right? And then he goes hiking with a third Baofang and
right,
uses the repeater to stay in touch with his friend,
totally.
in town. Yeah, it's just
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
it's really cool, right? And I
And
mean,
as you
I
say,
can
yeah,
believe that he's hiking, lower in the mountain. He's sending the signal up to the top of the mountain, and then from the top of the mountain, it's rebroadcasting back into town. It's probably a lot better than trying to reach someone like you're saying from his little handheld from the trail. So
yeah, which probably would not even be possible if you're in a valley and they're on the other side of the mountain in a valley. Without that repeater, you're just it's not going to succeed. So, but imagine also like I know our club members of our club participate in bicycling road race events, and they have to use different types of repeater like technologies so that they can keep in contact with each other at different points along the road race. And if they're not line of sight, they're going to have a hard time of it.
mhm.
So this is the kind of inexpensive deployable repeater functionality, which just adds a lot of distance and a lot of functionality. That's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things he pointed out is it's $100, right? So it's not nothing, but if something happens to it, he's not out, thousands of
Exactly.
dollars, which is what, what it would cost if it was a full on professional repeater.
Exactly. And probably, lightweight,
Hmm.
and I was just going to say that I forget the brand of the, it's not Gator, but it's whatever the case brand, which tends to be a bit more expensive. But you can go to Harbor Freight and get the Apache equivalent for like a third of the cost.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
in fact, this is a Harbor Freight hard case. Yeah.
yeah,
He's
the
got the
Apache.
whole, in his show notes, he's got the whole, here's the whole breakdown, right,
Mm.
of the
Great.
equipment. So
So, like I'm sure
yeah, here's the
our
Apache $10 Harbor Freight hard
yeah,
case.
with the discount, that's great. Yeah, I think they usually run, maybe depending on the one that you buy, it might be $30, but the coupons really help.
Hmm.
So, but as our audience is going to hear repeatedly, we're going to have a parallel wiki blog thing where we're going to post all the links for all the things that we or our guests mention, that after the show, or even, I don't know about during the show, but anyway, after the show, anybody who wants to can go there and find the references. So they'll find this video there and other things.
Yeah,
Great.
hamradiotakeaways.com. That's right.
Great. All right. So anything else before we transition to our next segment?
No, I think that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. All right. So our next segment is, just as a way of leading in on this. The intention that you and I talked about in designing the show was to include what we thought would be a sort of keep it simple type training or tutorial on various topics that are important to the radio amateur, and not necessarily in breadth and depth as if it were like a complete course segment, but just something that kind of plants the seed and then or renews an idea about the particular topic, and then use that as a way of inviting folks, if they want to know more about that subject, to either go to our blog or go to other references that they'll learn about from this segment. So that's a way of saying that what we intentionally are trying to do is deliver educational content, but in a very short period of time. So this particular segment we're calling the 10-minute trainer, and it's 10 minutes of an introduction to a particular topic. And our trainer, who you're going to meet in a moment, we're going to take a short break, but then we'll come back, is Dave Alpha Alpha 7 X-ray X-ray. And what we talked with him about, and we'll do this for each of our monthly shows, he's going to join us and highlight or focus on a particular topic of interest and offer 3 takeaways for each of those subjects. And we're referring to those takeaways as his double X factor, because there's an X factor that makes the difference between learning something or not learning something. And he offers the double X factor because he's AA7XX. Anyway, so anything else about this, Nick, before we take just a brief break, and then we'll jump into that
No,
recorded
I mean, I
segment?
just want to point out that Dave is the training officer for the West Seattle Amateur Radio Club, which is our local radio club. In fact, I took his general class. And so it's, yeah, great content. He's a
Great.
great teacher.
Yes. Dave has a PhD in electrical engineering and brings a manner of teaching which is very refreshing, because I think what he does I won't say much about this. I just want to say that he delivers content in a very user-friendly way, and the way that he delivers his courses is not teaching to a test. So those that learn about the content that is needed to take the test walks away with a broader understanding, or at least what questions remain, uh, beyond what might be asked of them on the actual technician class or general class test. So I think so anyway, I'm delighted to have him join us as our 10-minute trainer. And so let's take a quick break. And then Nick, you're going to queue up and bring us back with a recorded segment that we had with Dave recently.
Yep.
Well, welcome back, everyone. And this morning we have what we hope will be the beginning of a routine every show, every month. And that is inviting the 10-minute trainer, our friend Dave AA7XX. And we're referring to his segment here as the double X factor, because what he will train us on and share with us in terms of educational content really does represent an X factor, but in this case, it's a double X factor. So, Dave, what do you got for us this month?
Okay, well, thank you, Jonathan and Nick, for having me on your show. It's an honor, and I'm excited to share some things with you all. So a question that often comes up is, why do I like ham radio? And there are a couple of things that first come to mind. And the first for me is that it is weird and wonderful. The physics behind radio, the electrical engineering involved is really fascinating. And I'm going to start, with a very basic description here of a crystal radio. I first saw crystal radio being made when I was about 5 years old. I was intrigued with it at the time. And I'm 62 years old now, and I'm just as intrigued, maybe even more so. It's a phenomenal little device. It's like a pure physics experiment happening right before your very eyes. And it works off the power of the radio wave itself. There's no battery, there's no utility power. You just need a capacitor to help tune the thing. You need an antenna, which is not shown here, and typically a ground connection with that. You need a diode to detect the signal and something to listen with. It's as simple as that, which is in and of itself really, phenomenal. I did some calculations and a little bit of experimentation and came up with this loop antenna as an alternative. So you don't have to have a 50-foot long wire hanging from a tree outside. You don't need a ground connection. This is really quite simple. The trick is to make it big enough. I found by making it 6 feet in diameter here, it works pretty well. This one has 9 loops of wire, but really you need maybe 4, 5, 6 wires for it to work quite well. And I've got a little clip to show you here. Let's bring that up. You have to listen quietly. So that's the crystal radio in action. So weird phenomena. I just love it. Another thing that I find really intriguing that fits in the weird and wonderful category is just how sensitive radios are. You really don't need much power to get a signal through. This boggles my mind, frankly. I wrote an Excel spreadsheet a few years ago and made some calculations just with a regular 5-watt handheld amateur radio. On the 2-meter band, if you do the math, the range, if you're in outer space, works out to be about 2,400 miles, which is amazing. And that's with a little rubber duck antenna.
Wow.
If you put a proper monopole antenna on there, with a good ground plane, that goes up to 16,000 kilometers. It's really quite amazing. Now, ground reflections really subtract from that. So if you do thought experiment where you're standing at just regular standing height, 5 or 6 feet high, with purely flat ground in between, no obstructions, so it's line of sight, the effect of the ground reflections causes that range to drop dramatically. Ends up being about 7 miles because the reflection is negative. So that's a topic for another day. That's a really interesting phenomenon. And often you'll see, people on the internet arguing about the little handheld FRS radios, the family radio service radios that you can buy at convenience stores. They're limited to 2 watts of power. Antenna, again, isn't very good. But if you do the math, the range in outer space is about 500 miles. The manufacturers typically will tell you 30 miles. And then you hear people say, 30 miles, that's a bunch of baloney. I get maybe 2 miles. Well, yeah, with take into account ground reflections and obstructions, 2 miles would be a very common range you might get. My daughter here is trying to make contact through a satellite. It just blows my mind. There's a satellite. There are a number of satellites up there. This one is called SO50. It's a little CubeSat. Transmits with 1/4 watt of power. Okay, that's the same power as that Christmas tree light that you see there. And
that's amazing.
You can easily hear it. 600 kilometers high in its orbit. At the slant angle there, it can easily be 1,000 kilometers away. But with this gain antenna, and it's not even that big of an antenna, 9 dBi gain, you can easily hear it. And I made a contact with somebody in Arizona, somebody else in Texas here from Seattle. It blows my mind.
Right.
And I did the math with that. Without the effect of ground reflections, the range is actually like 4,000 kilometers. So the curvature of the Earth is what gets in the way before you lose the signal, actually.
And so you say ground reflections without ground reflections there. With ground reflections, would it be farther?
No, it'd be less. The ground reflections will subtract from it. But because it's so high, the ground reflections don't cause a problem. And the other thing that I am intrigued with, besides the weird and the wonderful, and the low power, which fits in the weird and wonderful, is that amateur radio is extremely useful for emergency communications. So what I'm showing here are the amateur radio bands in red, and you can see they're spread throughout the radio spectrum, and we've got a lot of bandwidth. We also are allowed a lot of power, up to 1,500 watts of power in most bands. So this works really well for emergencies. And to drive this point home, I was at a convention, a ham radio convention. It's called Comm Academy. And during the lunch break, we toured these municipal communication vehicles. This one I'm showing is from Blaine, Washington, up next to the Canadian border. And inside were 3 stations. Okay, now I would have expected this would be all about the public service frequencies. Well, the first station was entirely ham radio, 2 meter, 70 centimeter, the 220 band. The second station over was the public safety 800 megahertz system, as you would expect. And then the third station was HF, high frequency or short wave, so long distance communications. So 2/3 of this entire vehicle were devoted to ham radio. I just thought that was amazing. And the other vehicles were similar, maybe not 2/3, but a substantial portion of, the radio equipment inside the municipal communications vehicles were devoted to ham radio. So it's not just
So that means that those municipal workers are ham operators. They're licensed amateur radio operators.
Yeah, they must be,
Right.
to make use of that. Exactly. And you hear about this all the time, how important the amateur radio is. There's a video I highly recommend watching. It's called Katrina, the Untold Story.
Hmm.
And it's a 6-minute long video. It's really a tribute to the ham radio operators that helped during Katrina. And it's quite touching, actually. It's a bit of a tearjerker, I would say. It's almost like watching the movie Brian Song. It'll choke you up,
Yeah.
You know.
So Nick, we can add that link to our show notes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's a good one. And another thing I'll just mention, it's one of my favorite stories regarding the low power situation.
Mm-hmm.
During Apollo 11, there was a ham radio operator in Louisville, Kentucky. He built a big feed horn antenna. It was 8 by 12 feet made with chicken wire, so he could listen directly to the Apollo astronauts talking to each other.
Wow.
Not the S-band microwave link coming back, to Houston. Just the 5-watt VHF communication between the astronauts themselves.
Wow.
And he made it work. You can look it up. It's called Kentucky Eavesdropping on Apollo 11, or maybe it's just Eavesdropping on Apollo 11. You can find it at the ARRL website. It's
wow,
just amazing stuff.
That would be fun to listen to. Well, Dave, so I have a quick question for you. So, first off, I want to just mention that in sort of compliment to your quarter watt magic, of how long low power will go. I've actually succeeded in using Whisper, which is a weak signal propagation reporting program that folks may be aware of. And I've sent a 200 milliwatt signal to Antarctica that is confirmed. And not just once as a fluke. I sometimes go back and do it multiple times just to kind of, because it's a propagation reporting program. So, you can learn about when would be the best time to try it. So I've tried it different times, and sometimes it fails, sometimes it, usually works. But
That's
anyway,
amazing.
my point
2
is,
watts.
yeah, no, 200 milliwatts.
200 milliwatts. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
No, yeah, super low, wickedly low power, but akin to what you were saying, Dave. So here's my question. So with an eye towards your classes, you mentioned a few times, if you do the math. So my question to you is, for those that might be anxious about doing the math, is it your sense that whether it be how you deliver it or just generally how we think about the mathematics beneath amateur radio and how we would calculate these, particular areas, your sense is that it's doable for anyone, even if they don't have a math background?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I like doing the math, taking a deep dive on my own. And that's one of the neat things about ham radios, that you can do that, but you don't need that to get your license. And for 99% of anything we do, the communicating, you don't need that. And in the classes, the math is really quite basic. Just arithmetic, basically. Not even really algebra, although algebra could be useful, and certainly no calculus or anything like that. It's really very basic. Anybody can do it.
Yeah. So I asked that in part just for those that might be anxious about, doing math while they're learning a whole new subject and whatever, however strange that may feel. But I also want to say that one of the things I appreciate about your delivery is that you're not just teaching to the test. And I think what's really important is however people make amateur radio work for them, however they come to grasp the subjects, that they do so in a way that they can explain what they think they understand.
Exactly, Jonathan. I feel very strongly about that. You're not going to come out of a class with, a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, but to the extent that I can help people understand the concepts, I really, try to emphasize that. It's the concept of teaching a man to fish. If you can understand, the concept, you can reconstruct, what, is going on in your mind again and carry forward. You can, take the next steps as opposed to just rote memory, which tends to evaporate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took Dave's general class just a few months ago, and that was one of the things that really struck me. I mean, it was on Zoom, right? So anybody could take it, and it was just such a wide, diverse group of people, right? There were some computer engineers there, and then there were some people that had never taken, a math class outside of high school, and I thought that was really cool, and just helping each other. It was a really neat experience.
Exactly.
Well, we might think of that beneficial impact as the double X factor.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and
saying.
that is the challenge to the classes. There's a wide range of people, but that's also the beautiful thing about amateur radio. There are many, many aspects to it. I happen to like the weird and wonderful, but that's just one small piece. There are many things that people can do and enjoy in the hobby.
I last thing I'll just say, and then we'll wrap this up, is, I have found that my amateur radio career of sorts has changed its colors many different times. I'll get turned on to a particular mode, and I'll play with that mode or pursue it and, kick the tires and figure out, what's working, what isn't, this and that. And it's not that I get bored with it, but then I see something else that's shiny, and I go in a different direction, and all of a sudden, and it happens a lot,
Indeed.
Yeah. So, well, Dave, thank you very much. True to form, 10-minute trainer. So we'll see you next month. Do you have any idea what the topic is for the next month coming up?
Yeah, next time we have antennas on tap.
Great. Antennas on tap. And if folks want to know more about how to get in on your classes or to learn more about these subjects, where can they go?
So our website at the West Seattle Amateur Radio Club, if you go to the How to Become a Ham link and scroll all the way to the bottom, the lectures are actually there. On the website calendar will be information about upcoming classes, and you can always email me.
Great.
w7aw.org. And we'll put that in the show notes too.
Great. All right, Dave. See you next month.
See ya. Thank you.
Man, Dave is such a good educator.
All right. Yeah, that was really terrific. And we look forward to having that be a regular feature of our show month to month. And, the sort of beautiful dilemma in this, and I know it's sort of it's a dynamic challenge for him, if not for all of us, is that there's so much more to say about these subjects that you got to learn to give yourself boundaries on what not to say, so it doesn't consume, an hour, or however much time. So he does a very good job of keeping it simple and keeping it brief.
For sure.
So, the other thing I just want to mention is that, my question about, his reference to doing the math. I just wanted to say that it was an eye towards trying to encourage anybody that might be considering either their first license, their technician class, or upgrading to general or even to extra. But I think by having earned one's general, you might already know this, but the jump from technician to general does sort of move more squarely into the realm of learning how to operate on HF and getting more familiar with the capacities, but the responsibilities of how to operate beyond UHF, VHF. And what I had in my mind, I may not have said this explicitly, is that for those that are thinking about upgrading from technician to general, that I hope that what they can get from these segments and from Dave's archives and his lectures and so on is a sense of ease and confidence, and not be anxious or not feel as though it's not, that they can't reach it. And doing the math sometimes, for example, can feel daunting. But once you kind of know what the equations are, once you know what the meaning of doing the math implies, it's not only fun, but it sort of it makes it very practical. It makes it doable.
For sure.
So,
And just I just to that I would add the value of having an Elmer, the value of having a mentor, is so high. And just sort of case in point, I sort of uh, the shack tour that you gave me was really what introduced me to actually using HF. Like I never had used HF before that. I never would have. It's just like without that kind of an introduction, it can be daunting and mysterious and difficult to get into. And so, I mean, that, and the other thing is that Ron Zuber, N4RDZ, also a member of our club, showing me a bunch of the Arden Mesh stuff. I mean, another example where like going
right.
beyond just using your handheld, you're using that Baofeng, right? That $35, $25, whatever handheld you get for VHF. Having that kind of mentor is so valuable. I highly encourage any new hams to find your local club and get connected with someone and say, hey, I'm interested in whatever you are interested in. Show me what you're interested in so that I can be interested in it too.
Right.
So valuable.
That's great. Yeah, connecting those dots, usually in the courses, just by nature of the time constraints and everything else, it really does require the student to, after the fact, to figure out ways to creatively connect the dots and, get in on the action, which may not have been a natural byproduct of the class itself. So I agree with you, whether it's shack tours or just getting connected with a club and learning from others, that I think, as I'm hearing you say, it really does help focus that a bit. So great. All right. Well, so let's now transition to our next segment, which is some combination of a couple of news items, and we have some other resources to share. So the first item there is what I thought would be helpful is to talk about a news item that was actually broadcast by the Today Show. Was it last month in January, maybe? I don't know if it was in December or January. But this is a short video clip. We'll also put it in our show notes, so you'll be able to access it there. But it talks about how a local high school was able to not only create a amateur radio club at the high school with some mentoring by a teacher there, but that they did all they need to do and prepare and learn how to successfully make contact with the International Space Station. And I thought that this would be interesting to share in a nutshell for a whole host of reasons. So, Nick, let's play a short clip of this and see what it says.
Students are trying to contact someone who is not particularly easy to reach.
This is KC3SGV.
All those numbers and letters are ham radio call signs. NA1SS is the International Space Station.
3, 2, 1.
The first amateur contact in space happened 40 years ago with the Space Shuttle Columbia.
Hello, W1JXN. This is W5LFL. You're our first contact from orbit.
What advice would you
Since then, a group called ARIS,
so cool.
Amateur Radio on the International Space Station.
Probably need to pause it here, else YouTube is going to slap us with a
yeah,
DMCA.
well, let's just, we can pause here, and audience can go and check this out in the link. But I want to just mention that, one of the challenges that ham radio faces is trying to get more young people involved and helping them connect the dots about what getting a license and using the amateur radio capabilities that are fun and interesting. In this case, it's a nice complement to their STEM education. What could be the future of their educational achievements, among many other things. But how exciting to be able to
Oh, yeah.
contact this space station.
Yeah, what a cool opportunity for those kids.
Anyway, well, we just wanted to share that. So the next thing that I wanted to just mention is a resource that I think many could take advantage of, and that is the website of N7CFO. So Lynn Burlingame puts on a website and keeps current a resource for across the country. I don't know if it's international. I guess I have to drill into that to verify that, but at least across the U.S., maybe into Canada, an ongoing updated schedule of where you can find hamfests and other sort of social gatherings to connect with other radio amateurs, and testing and training events. So N7CFO, are you going to show that website?
Just having a little technical difficulty showing.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I simply mention that because
all right, there we go.
There it is. Okay. Yeah. So it has Pacific Northwest focus on this particular page, but if you can also drill in, you don't have to do this, Nick, but you can drill into this website and find hamfests that are being scheduled in different parts of the country, because I know our audience doesn't all live in the Northwest. So I learn a lot from what Lynn does on his website, and I think others, and I think it's nice to be able to highlight what he maintains, because it's it takes some effort to do that.
For sure. Yeah. Awesome resource.
And then secondly,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great resource. So not just the hamfest events, but also where, depending on where you're at, you can attend a class to upgrade your license, or even take an online test if you can't be physically in the place where the test is being offered. There's virtual testing opportunities. So anyway, anything else on this before we go to the next?
No.
Okay. So again, link will be in our show notes, and use that to your advantage. So the two events that I just wanted to touch on that are coming up this month in February. One is we know that the Hamcation event is coming up. It's an annual ARRL sponsored Hamvention type event in Florida. It's in Orlando. It coincides with the ARRL sponsored Florida convention, state convention. And I simply want to mention that this is an example, and you'll hear these month to month. We'll try to share a few of these, by no means an exhaustive list, but just a few of these that sort of give just plants a seed for a type of event where if you were to pay the registration and attend, you not only get to meet a lot of other people, but you get to visit the tables and the presentations of a whole bunch of companies and product producers and organizations that are involved in so too many facets of amateur radio that we could speak to right now. So it doesn't have to be the Hamcation event, but it's an example of where you can go and learn a lot. So this is one to, put a pin in it if you can get there. There are others coming throughout this year. The second one that I'll just want to mention is in Salem, Oregon, so on the West Coast. The Salem Ham Fair is coming up, and like others that will occur throughout the year, it's probably going to be some combination of educational programs where you can learn new skills, or an introduction of a new radio or some new technology that you could consider adding to your shack, but also opportunities to walk around the swap meet and maybe pick up some used gear at a good price. Yeah. So, Nick, have you had a chance to go to any swap meets yet?
I haven't, but I was just about to say, Ron Zuber and for RDZ is at or was just at recently Quartz Fest, and I watched some of the videos from there. There was a guy there that was doing a lot of recording, and it just looks so cool. I mean, there's talks, there's, like you're saying, equipment for sale and swap meets. There's testing going on. There's classes. They launched a balloon. I mean, Quartz Fest maybe is, I don't know if this is an outlier or not, because I've only been a ham for less than a year, but it just sounds like such a diverse set of activities and such a neat group of people. Great way to meet people, great way to find equipment, great way to expand your knowledge and just do
Right.
radio operating. It looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, sometimes what also becomes a sort of emergent or serendipitous benefit of these kinds of events is that, like at Quartz Fest, there's a lot of RVers that show up, and what you get is the opportunity to hear from others how they've adapted their radio activities to their RV, and that could include solar energy systems. Anything else that sort of blends the boundary between RVing and their radio amateur activities. So there's all kinds of indoor and outdoor activities like this, depending on the season, where you can learn a lot just by being in the same place. And so we may have Ron on and Cindy on as guests to our show in the future. I don't know. We'll see. But they gave a nice video presentation or slideshow or something last year when they were there. So maybe we'll do it again this year. Great. Okay. So this is just a sweetener of events that we'll introduce each month. And again, it'll just be a couple of items, but just as a way of introducing opportunities for people to go and learn from others. Okay, so let's go to our DX activities. So there's a website resource that we use routinely, and it's a great way of learning about what HFDX activities are happening. And that's the dxworld.net website. So each month, we will make a point of visiting this website so that we can just speak to some of the upcoming DXpeditions, the special events that teams of radio amateurs are aiming to put on the air. That is a group shot of a recently completed Tango X-Ray 5 Sierra TX5S DXpedition to where did they go? What are the islands that they were at? Is it Christmas Island?
The Clipperton
Island. Yeah. Thank you. So that's their team shot, and they're actually, as we speak, on their ship heading back to San Diego. I think they have about a day and a half left before they get back in.
Yeah,
but they were there for about 2 weeks, and I worked them a few times, and they were
I heard them on the air, but I could never get through. My antenna is only good at for 10 meters, and I never was able to catch them on 10 meters. But I heard them talking on 20 meters, and I heard them on CW on 10 meters. But I have yet to learn Morse code, and I don't have an electronic key or anything like that yet. So
okay, well, we'll work on that and get you set up. And just as an aside, I mean, usually these DXpeditions run what's referred to as split, and they listen on one frequency and transmit on another, and that's a way of spreading out the pileup so that they're not overwhelmed, and the gazillions of radio amateurs that are trying to reach them can have more space to attempt to contact them.
Yeah, that's another example of the value of an Elmer. Jonathan, just for the audience, Jonathan helped me figure out how to set up split on my radio so that I would be ready in case I did catch them on 10 meters. And that was just a neat experience to figure out, there's so many dials, it's a little intimidating, but it's sort of just with a little help, it's pretty straightforward and logical.
Yeah, we both run 7300s, and so it depending on the rig that you might be using, find somebody else that's been using that for a while, and you can learn a lot. There's a lot of little tricks and features and things. So in any event, running split was necessary in order to succeed at contacting the TX5S. Let's scroll down a little bit. So this page will give you profile pages for each of the DXpeditions that have at least been cited on here. It may not be all of them that are active for the month, but you can click on each of these and find more information, because usually is the case that the DXpeditions will have their own websites, and it'll talk about the equipment they're using and when they're going to be on the air and for how long. So each month we'll bring you back here briefly just to show you what's happening. And then there's a particular graphic that we want to show, Nick. This is a Gantt chart, I guess. Is it a Gantt chart? Anyway, it's a graphical depiction.
Right. It pops out in another window. No one else can see what I can see.
Oh, okay.
Yep, here we go.
All right. So this gives you another view of when these special event DXpeditions are going to be on the air. And that gives you a snapshot as to when you might begin listening for them. And more specifically, not just the dates, but depending on where you are, what time of day or night is going to be to your advantage to try to hear them. So, this little graphic is not just about the number of days and whatever week in the month that they might be on, but it's an invitation to think more about, given respective antennas, given propagation, all things considered, if I want to get this station that I haven't worked before, when am I going to need to be in front of my radio? So this is all really good information on that. So again, we'll put the link in the show notes, but bookmark this on your respective browser. Okay, so let's see. Anything else we want to say? I think that may be it for our news. Was there any other news events? I think that may be it for this time.
That's everything we got.
Okay, so next month we will come up with a couple more news items and things to share, and maybe highlight some of our DX activity. I don't know if I'll share any more about my TX5S. I don't know if I'll spend any time talking about that, but it was great fun, and it was nice to be able to work them. I'll just mention that one of the benefits, and maybe this is the case, that this will happen for the other DXpeditions, but with them in particular, they took a ship from San Diego to get to Clipperton, and during the ride out, they were Maritime Mobile, and I worked them on the ship. So they were TX5S stroke Mike, or MM for Maritime Mobile. And then when they got there, because of weather and whatever else, they had to transition their focus to actually getting ready to get on the island. So they went off the air as Maritime Mobile and became, the island on the air.
That's so cool, yeah.
Yeah, so I was able to get the Maritime Mobile suffix, which is...
Are they doing QSL cards for any of it?
I hope they are. I don't know. That's a fair question. Might look on their website. I didn't look into that yet. But
one of the things I want to add about all these DXpeditions, I've noticed, as I'm looking at them, a lot of these folks are asking for volunteers. And especially, I saw one group that they're going to go to Somalia. They're going to do a DXpedition to Somalia, and they were asking for volunteers, especially young hams, young new hams, people under the age of 20. they were looking
Right.
for. And it just, what an amazing trip. And they've got money, right? They've got funding. So
Sponsorship.
yeah, it's so cool. It just seems like such
That
a
is
neat
terrific.
trip. Yeah.
Well, and what a life-changing event it could be.
Yeah.
The DXpeditions are exciting in many different ways. It's part of the journey, the physical travel of getting wherever one's going, but also just, learning how to practically put up a station and to troubleshoot when, something goes sideways or something breaks and you're in the middle of nowhere and you got to, figure out how to get it back going again. So there's a lot of practical skill benefit that comes from being a part of a DXpedition. So anyway, great. So let's take a quick break and then we'll come back for our feature segment.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Hey, here we are. So this live stream will become a recorded episode on our YouTube channel. So that was a short break, and I actually didn't leave. So I just stayed here. But anyway, that's a way for us to sort of break up the segments in our recording. So if somebody wanted to find a particular segment, they can go right to it if they return to it. But this particular segment now is what we're thinking of as our feature segment. And in the future, what we hope is to have guests that join us. It probably will be a pre-recorded, like we did with Dave AA7XX, just because it's easier to line up schedules and not have our guest have to be doing it right when we're doing it. So we'll figure out who in the future we would like to have talk about a particular subject. But this time, the first time, I'm actually going to facilitate the feature segment. And what I want us to focus on this time around is both an organization and an event that just finished last month of January. So Nick, let's go to the Straight Key Century Club website, if you would. And I wanted to key, no pun intended, I want to key on this particular organization for the moment, and then we'll segue to its feature event. So the Straight Key Century Club, as its name implies, is an organization that was founded in 2006, actually, and has quickly evolved to, I'm going to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 members. Many members, free membership, and it's intended to highlight and feature the use of straight keys, that is non-electronic assisted Morse code keys, mechanical keys. And there's two flavors at least of what that implies is in terms of a Morse code key that's, I'm going to say, that's eligible to be used, in the spirit of what the organization is all about. One is a vibroplex bug, and I'll lift up and show you mine here right now. So this is a 1942 vibroplex bug that I used as part of the event that I'm going to describe in a moment. And you connect a couple of wires to these posts right here. And these weights, there's a weight on the end and then a weight right in the middle of the throw arm. As you move the paddles back and forth, the weights actually assist with the contacts that are made and controlling the dits and dahs and the electrical connections that that opens and closes the circuit, let's put it that way. And so the weighted throw allows for an easier, less fatiguing experience on the part of the Morse code operator. And and actually in a very fast manner. So I use a variety of vibroplex keys, and that one just happens to be one that's been around
And
since
these are
1942.
straight keys
The
as
other,
opposed to
yeah,
what's not a straight key if these are straight keys.
yeah, often the alternative is a paddle key that is an electronically controlled paddle that most modern rigs, and even if they don't come with an electronic keyer built in, one can get an accessory device that plugs into the old rig that allows for an electronic keyer to operate, to be used. And paddles tend to be they're speed adjustable by way of a software program or whatever that accessory is, or a knob turning on your rig. I think the idea behind creating the Straight Key Century Club was that modern rigs increasingly are using electronic paddles, and Morse code operations not only are what should I say, that not only can they be quicker electronically, but you can also use keyboards or pre-recorded messages that take the place of the manual use of Morse code to actually make contacts or to communicate. And I don't think that the sort of underlying critique is that, that's not really Morse code if you're using a canned message. But I should say that it's just not the same thing. It's not this. If you push a button or type on your keyboard, it's actually not the same skill set. Not any better or worse, but it's not the same skill set as physically knowing how to use a straight key.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first one that I showed you was the vibroplex key, which actually takes some doing to get all of the adjustments to that key just right so that it works the way it should reliably. It's not a plug and play device by any means. It requires a little bit of learning on how to do that well. And then the other, which if we go back to the website for a minute, the other featured straight key is actually a straight key. Stay at the top there. So the one on the right there is actually what's called a flame-proof key, and I have one right here. I don't think I can lift. I didn't get it ready to lift out, but I can move my camera. Let me just move my camera if I can. If it doesn't look too terrible. It's right here. So yeah, right there. Okay, so that's my straight key, and it's the same key that's featured. I'm going to put my camera back now. It's the same straight key that's featured up on the Straight Key Century Club website, and it's called a flame-proof key because the contact is surrounded by what is it? It's a metal encasing. It's not a box, but the contact is surrounded by metal so that when the operator would actually use that key and a tiny little spark might occur when the contacts are made, that spark would not cause a problem. And the problem that I'm referring to is that if a merchant mariner were using that key on a ship, that's a World War II key back in the same era as my vibroplex key. That radio operator might find themselves in their station on that ship near bunker fuel or near the fuel storage for that ship. And the last thing you want is the spark off of that key to ignite vapors. So the flame-proof key was created, and there may be other reasons why this was created, but at least one of the reasons was to prevent that spark from, causing a chain reaction of some sort.
That was probably a real genius invention at the time, right? I mean, figuring out that you needed to do that and then figuring out how to build that. Yeah.
Yeah, and very safely. Well, it turns out, fast forward, you can still get these keys on eBay. You can still find them at Hamfest. And It is my favorite straight key. Now, for the purposes of Straight Key Century Club and for our discussion, we're combining the bug, the Vibroplex bug. We're combining that with an actual straight key and calling them straight keys. But it's really it's sort of a misnomer because a bug, while it is not electronically assisted and it is a mechanical key, it's not really a straight key in the sense that the vertical movement of a straight key, like the one the flameproof design, and there are many other types. I prefer the flameproof because its action is so smooth. It's just so non-fatiguing, let's say. I won't go in depth about the origin of the bug, but I do want to say, just in passing, that the reason why the bug exists is because back in the day when relay operators, before wireless, were transmitting and retransmitting across cables across the US, sending back and forth messages long before radio. These cable operators were paid by the word, and the faster they were able to relay messages, the more money they might earn. And my understanding is that over time, their careers were affected by what we know today as carpal tunnel, or injuries that they might incur from that repeated motion of using the vertical up and down with your wrist. And so as they got slower or became debilitated, they weren't able to do what they did as a career. Well, long about in the late 1890s to the early 1900s, a fellow named Horace Martin invented the first Vibroplex bug, which is like that device on the screen there, like I showed you. And what that did is that was a game changer for a lot of these debilitated vertical straight key senders, because now all of a sudden they had a horizontal motion with their thumb and their forefinger, and it was a weighted throw, like I showed you. It had those weights that would assist in making the electrical connection. So all of a sudden, not only were they able to do their craft again, get paid for sending their messages, but they could do it much more quickly. So their speed increased, and let's just say they were physically able to maintain their career. So anyway, you fast forward over the last 100 years or whatever, and there are still a lot of bugs and straight keys out there being used. But with the advent of electronic keys and the paddles, which we'll show in another episode, there's cause to figure out a way to keep the use of mechanical keys alive and to encourage their use. So the Straight Key Century Club was created as a free membership organization to encourage that. And they have events throughout the year that encourage people to get on the air, learn Morse code, use their mechanical keys. So there's one particular event that I wanted to just briefly focus on, and that is the Straight Key Month. So if you go to that particular page, the Straight Key Month is the month of January every year, and their special event station is K3Y. And K3Y stations are operated by SKCC members who have volunteered to put K3Y on the air wherever they happen to be, usually out of their homes, wherever they happen to be living. And so if these K3Y stations are located in each of the call areas of the US and around the world across different continents and countries. So if you click on the log search, I think it is, and you just put in my call sign, well, that what will come back is a representation of all the contacts that I made with the K3Y stations over the month of January. And so these are all contacts that were made with my Vibraplex bugs. I don't think I did any with this. No, I did maybe a couple with the actual straight key. I just I don't find that to be as fast as I would prefer. Uh, but I guess I did a couple of them just for me to demonstrate that my straight key's working the way it should, and so it's a good test. But what you see there is my having achieved what's called a grand sweep, and meaning that I made contact across all those bands with every eligible K3Y station. And so that includes all of the call areas plus Puerto Rico and Hawaii, and then 6 other continents.
That's amazing. Hey, congratulations.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun. And so, aside from that, I wanted to just say that these are it doesn't have to be the straight key month event. It can be anything else that SKCC puts on weekly, if not monthly, throughout the year. It's a great way to learn from others involved in Morse code how to get on the air and just basically communicate with each other using Morse code. And for me, it's partly an opportunity to just routinely test my equipment and make sure that my bugs are ready to go, and that they're operable, they're useful. And I encourage people to, if it's possible, go to a ham fest, get on eBay, get on qth.com. That's another online swap meet. We'll put in our show notes, and find an antique bug or find an antique straight key. You don't have to buy new all the time. There's a lot of new ones out there, and Vibraplex is still a great company to buy from. So I'm not discouraging, buying new if that's what one wants to do. But you can also find a lot of old bugs that are out there. And whatever floats your boat, get a bug that you have fun using and get it on the air. Get your straight key on the air and have that be a point of pride.
So I notice on this that you almost have a full sweep on 17 meters.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about 17 meters? Is that just a coincidence, or is 17 meters somehow more ideal for this, or what?
Well, so that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. And I can't see, given the resolution of the screen share that I'm seeing, I can't see what is the one that I did not get on 17?
K3YAF.
Okay, that's Africa. Okay. So a couple things here. First off, all of these contacts, except for the low bands on 40, 80, I don't think I have a 160. I didn't make one.
No, you don't have any 160s.
No, or 6. But on the 40 and 80, those were done off of my long wire. But all the others in the higher frequency HF bands were off of my hex beam. And
which, just for the audience, is pretty impressive, that hex beam. You got a nice setup there.
Yeah, it's a cool antenna, and we'll do at some point, maybe as a news item. I don't know if it'll be a feature, but we'll talk about different antenna types. When Dave, I think, talks about antennas, maybe we'll follow that with just a brief tutorial of the hex beam.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I've been doing a bunch of research on antennas recently, and yeah, hex beams, pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's one of various options. I actually like the price point for a hex beam and its performance, but this is hex beam, and so 17 meters among these others where I had quite a few contacts on, the hex beam does very well.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened that of the stations that were on the air on 17 meters, I happened to be there at that time, and I got them. I actually worked. I got the South African station, 10,000 miles away. I actually heard him and got him, but he didn't get me. He sent me an email, because I sent him an email after I saying, is this confirmed? Because it's confirmed on my end.
Uh-huh.
But he wrote back and he said, well, I got the KK7, but I didn't get the suffix.
Mm.
Right. So I missed a 17-meter sweep because time ran out. In like the last 2 days, I was trying feverishly to get
Oh
them.
man, that's got to really burn your buns, huh?
Yeah. So I missed them, but I did get Mauritius 3 Bravo 8 Hotel Lima, I think it was. I did get them on, what is that, 20? Is that
Yeah.
what it is?
On 20 meters, 3 Bravo. I don't know if you can see, but it's hovering over who you worked, and it's 3 Bravo 8 Hotel Lima.
Yeah, Hotel Lima. Yeah. So I got him on the next to the last day on 20. And then the other one that was the last was the South America. And that was Suriname. Which one was that? I think also on 20.
It doesn't. It only lists for. This is for Africa.
No, for 7. Maybe it's on 17 at the bottom for South Africa.
Oh, okay.
What station was that?
Papa Zulu 5, Juliet Whiskey.
That's right. Yes, Papa Zulu 5. So that's in Suriname. And my options for both Africa and South America were I think deliberately very slim. There were just a couple of stations for all of Africa to work. And I think I had 5 or 6 options, a few Brazilian, 1 Argentinian, and 1 in Suriname. And it so happened that Suriname was on. It was spotted, and got them and confirmed it. So, but I didn't get the African station on 17. So I got a grand sweep across multiple bands.
Yeah.
Using multiple bands. So.
And was that the picture that you sent me not too long ago? You sent me a picture from the editors of CQ.
No, that was a contest result, and maybe in a future I'll show. But there was a certificate that one can generate that verifies the grand sweep, and I forgot to bring that this time. Maybe I'll show it in the future. But you can generate a certificate that confirms this. So the takeaway from this, and I'll wrap it up with this, is that it's a lot of. I think these kinds of events bring to life and make fun what is otherwise sometimes a daunting feeling around, will I ever learn Morse code? And how could I learn the code and use it? And I in one way or another, I hear that sort of question over and over again. I've been a code op for 30 years, for a long, long time. And I have to say that for me anyway, and there's many, 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 many other code ops that are, I think, much more capable than I am. And hopefully we'll have them on the show next month or near future. But
you're too modest, Jonathan.
Well, no, I want to say that I can do it fairly well. But my point in saying that is, I get fatigued when I get tired. My ability to interpret what I hear degrades, and or I make mistakes or I copy incorrectly or whatever. And everybody does that. Everybody has their own sort of fatigue threshold and what comes easy and what doesn't. And, practice helps. And so my point being is that the Straight Key Century Club is a great way to not only sort of fall in love with a particular type of key that one wants to use and really have fun using that key on a regular, and learning how to use that well, because it's a practice skill. It's not a instantly acquired skill. But then also these events put you in the company of others that are very accommodating. And, they're not going to, diss you if you make mistakes, sending the wrong letter or whatever. It's a friendly opportunity to practice on the air at different speeds. Some of these events can get quite fast, And that's good practice to tune your ear into being able to hear code at a high speed.
I
And
mean,
then some of them,
even
yeah.
voice, I think there's a learning
Mhm.
curve to recognizing and like picking up call signs and understanding when you can break in. I mean, the whole process.
Exactly. Totally. So these organizations, and not limited to Stray Key Century Club, but there are plenty of these kinds of on-air activities where anybody who's new to it can take comfort in the fact that they're designed to encourage people to take the risk and to get on the air and to make contact and not be afraid that you're going to mess up or say the wrong thing or whatever. So listening goes a long way. Don't get me wrong in that one should not just jump right in and not know what they're doing and contribute to chaos. It's not that. Listening goes a long way. So if you want to join an on-air net, you want to join a straight key event or whatever the schedule has to offer, learn what that's about before you jump in, because it doesn't take that long to do it. And once you have a sense as to what they're listening for, well, then give it a go, and try it out. And so anyway, that's what I wanted to share. And that will be that sort of intro to Straight Key Century Club and this little talk right here. Hopefully, will be the seed for what will be a topic, if not next month, in a future where we'll have other ops come on and talk about their experiences in using Morse code to do interesting things. And I have some folks in mind that might be good to have on.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap that up. Let's take a quick break and then we'll come back for our final segment.
All right. We'll take a break. All right. And we're back.
Okay. Great. Well, Nick, so what we talked about as part of a feature of our show is to close our show with an on-air live demonstration so that we can, connect the dots in some ways. So what I'd like to do is put my station on the air right here. I'm going to foreground so that I can see my spectrum. So let me describe what we're going to try to do here. I run an ICOM 7300. I run different rigs at different times, but for our purposes right now, an ICOM 7300, which has attached to it, by way of a modification, a second separate software-defined radio, or SDR, receiver. And that receiver is the RSP Duo. So anybody who's interested in adding or playing with a software-defined radio, one source of really good radio equipment is the SDR Play company. So if you go to sdrplay.com, you can go to their website and learn about. And the major ham radio vendors, they sell their products, so you can learn more about them. But I chose the RSP Duo, which is an SDR receiver that actually has two receivers in itself. So technically, I have three software-defined radios in line right now as we speak. One is in the 7300, and then there are two receivers that are being used within the Duo, the RSP Duo. So the reason why I do that is because it allows me then to connect with or use my 7300 with third-party software. And one of the pieces of software that I use that is free, that anybody can download and use, and you don't have to use it the way I use it, you can fiddle around with it and use it in other ways, is the SDR console software program. So That's what we're looking at right here. So SDR console allows me to see, in this case, my 20 meter band, its spectrum scope off the 7300, and using the dual receive capability of my RSP Duo. And so the reason why I do this is because it gives me an easier to see graphical interface for my spectrum scope. I see the same or a similar version on my 7300 already, but I can port this out and put it online, put it on the air. We can put it into YouTube. I put it into Discord, wherever.
Well, and you get a bunch of other information here too, right? You've got overlays, some kind of annotation. What are all of those annotations?
Great. Yeah. So unlike what is available on the 7300 screen, this shows me a real-time DX cluster. That is, what stations have been spotted at what frequencies. And I actually turned off the feature, but there's a feature that I could turn on. I don't know if I can see it under the view menu easier here. Don't know where I would do that. Band plan. What it is? Yeah, right here. Okay. So if I turn on band plan, this shows me where on the 20 meter band different types of emissions or modes will be found. So right here, FT8 mode fits. There's FT8 going on right here.
Yeah.
And actually over here. Usually it specifies by a color difference. I don't know why. For some reason I may have changed it, but usually the CW portion down here is like, I don't know, blue, and then the phone SSB sideband portion of the 20 meter band is purple or something. But since I don't need to know, since I've memorized what these are, I turn this off because it just gets in the way of my screen. But I'll leave it on for now. But so this is a DX cluster that shows me the actual stations that are available or doing whatever they're doing. And this green line right here is where my 7300 is right now tuned at 14.285. So that's where my VFO is right now. So if I want to go and see who's talking right there, I can take my mouse and click right there, and sure enough, we will move. And then on my 7300, since I'm off frequency, this person's going to be on actually 207 directly. I can turn the multi knob on my 7300, and in one turn, it takes me right to the beat frequency, right at the 207. So I'm going to unmute here and see who this person is that's talking.
Victor Alpha 7 X-ray United, Victor Alpha 7 X-ray uniform.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my amplifier into the operate mode.
Victor Alpha 7 X-ray United.
And I'm pointing this guy's direction.
Kilo ending in Bravo again.
I'll get in after this person.
Yeah, so he's actually doing a contact right now, right?
He is. And this is the BC, British Columbia QSO party.
Kilo at 6 Hotel Bravo 59 Charlie, Papa, Germany.
Sorry, I don't know what CPG is. Might be Calgary. I can't hear you. You're muted. I couldn't hear you, Nick.
Am I muted?
You are now. What were you saying?
I think that's just your. Oh, I was just saying that they're just doing a QSO. I don't know anything else about it. Yeah.
Okay. Kilo 7 Papa Whiskey.
Kilo 7 Papa Whiskey 59 Charlie, Papa, Germany.
Okay, thank you. You're 5'9" into Seattle. What's the exchange you need from me?
Just the 5'9" and your state abbreviation.
Okay, so Washington, Whiskey Alpha. So good copy. Are you in Calgary?
No, I'm a VE7, so I'm in British Columbia. I'm about 500 miles north of Vancouver.
Okay, Roger, Roger. Yep. Okay. Well, good luck and thanks for the cue. And 7-3, KK7PW.
Great, no problem. And thanks for the contact. And you got a great signal here, 7th Street. Victor Alpha 7X-ray uniform. British Columbia QSO party. Gears up.
All right, I'm going to mute this for a second. So I just want to mention that that's a 20-meter contact with the station in British Columbia, 500 miles north of Vancouver, and my hex beam pointed in their direction, and I ran, and that actually, what was that? What was my power out? I don't know how much power I was putting out at the moment. Might have been 500 watts, if that. I don't know. So, in any event, good contact.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And
that was great.
And the whole purpose on his end is to try to make as many contacts to collect points to get the highest score for that QSO party, which is a contest.
Yeah, and which is why that was so short, right? Because sometimes these go on for a while, right? You really get someone that might want to know all about your rig, and they might want to tell you about what the weather is like and all this other stuff too, right?
Exactly. So that was not as much of a rag chew as it was just confirming a contact, short and sweet, and I actually did something that I probably, had I prepared for this, I would have done differently. And that is, I would not have asked him, what does he need from me? Right. For our purposes. Yeah.
Right. Because he's trying to contest, right? I mean, he's trying to do this as quick as possible so that he can win, right?
Yes. So he's very accommodating, and you could tell that from the little bit that we were listening, he wasn't working a pile up. People, there was space and time available for me to.
Yeah, it was super easy for you to get in, right? You didn't have to.
Yeah. But if he were really busy and working real fast, I would not have tried to connect with him without knowing in advance what the exchange would have been. So in this case, if somebody comes across a QSO party, which they usually happen, there's something once a month, different states. Yeah. So you'd want to do a little research.
Do you need to log that somewhere in order for him to get credit? Do you need to basically confirm the...
Yeah, I suppose technically I should, but it's enough for him to know that he made contact with me, and I don't think that their QSO party reviewers need a check log from me to verify that.
Okay.
But it is a good thing to do, to send in a log, however many contacts one makes, so that there is a record in both directions. So let's just try one more, and then we'll wrap it up here. But it's see who else we can work. So I'm going to unmute this.
Are you contact somebody else? Just on the IMD, this is probably the only app they made that actually uses a pair of Alpha Linky AF1Z, down from Alaska. Any station anywhere. Thank you.
Kilo 7 Papa Whiskey.
Kilo 7 Papa Whiskey. Got your 5-9. Name here is Jess. Juliet Echo Sierra Hotel.
Hey Jess, nice to meet you. Name is Jonathan. I'm in West Seattle, and you're a good 5'9" down here into Seattle. Where are you in Alaska? Over.
Yes, Jonathan, thanks for the 5'9". I'm located up at about 60 miles south of Anchorage. Over.
Well, that's terrific, and good signal down here. I'm running a hex beam, running about, I'd say about 800 watts, something like that. and my 7300. And you sound real good down here. How's the weather up there on your end? Is it snowing?
Well, actually, it just let up snowing. We got about 6 to 7 inches last night.
And Nick, you can look them up on QRZ.
15 to 20 below for the past couple weeks, but with
so maybe we can see his profile.
Here in Tampa, which is it's a nice reprieve, but sounds like you got a good setup. I'm running a DX Commander antenna and probably about 300 watts.
Oh, that's terrific. And could you just give me your call one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. It's Alpha Lima 1 Zulu.
Great. Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure. And it's actually, I think maybe, what's the temperature? Well, it's 47 degrees here. It's a balmy 47 compared to what you might be having on your end up there. I know it can get a bit colder. But no snow in the forecast for us. Might have some rain come back for tomorrow. But anyway, well, Jess, nice to meet you there, and I'll let you go and work some others. And thanks for the QSO today. Alpha Lima 1 Zulu KK7 Papa Whiskey 73.
73, Jonathan. Thank you. Kilo Gold 7 Fox.
All right. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to mute him. So what Nick is showing us is how you can look up on QRZ.com the information about that station. And was there information on the biography?
No, its biography's empty.
Okay. So sometimes there's biography data, but you can at least, bring up a map and you can see the miles. How many miles are between us?
I don't know. Where does it show the mile?
Right to the left there, you'll see the long path and short path.
Oh yeah, distance 1,447 miles. Long path is 23,000 miles.
Yeah, so the short path, in the way in which I'm pointing at him right now, is about 1,500 miles. So I actually wouldn't need to run as much power as I did. I probably could have gotten him on 50 watts.
Yeah.
I just did it just because it was on and I can do it. So anyway, well, every month we'll make a point of trying to do some live on air. I think next month I'll call CQ, and instead of hunting around for a contact, I'll be calling CQ and have others come to us, and we'll have some chats and maybe do some other modes. So, anything else, Nick, about this before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, just that, this QSO thing, I think, is one of the most exciting parts of amateur radio. I mean, it's fun. There's a lot of people. You learn a lot. All of the other people everybody I've interacted with has been friendly so far. Sometimes a station won't accept your call, which is fine. Like, they're working hard, trying to get Africa, trying to get South America, something like that. And but every time anybody's ever accepted my call, they've been super friendly, helpful. It's great part of the hobby.
Yeah, my hope is that whether it be through this show and what you and I talk about, or other sources, that everybody who's listening in here and is thinking about what they might be able to do with their amateur radio ticket, that they get the motivation to get on HF bands. Partly is because what you just said is that it's a lot of fun and you learn a lot just by mustering the courage to get on the air and, see who you can work. Work in Alaska is fun. Working into British Columbia is fun. That just happened to be the direction my antenna's pointed.
Yeah.
Right. But the other reason I think, and this is it doesn't have to be others, but it's for me, is that it's the HF bands where all this action began. It's the historical foundation of amateur radio. And it's not to suggest that, having a focus on VHF, UHF, whatever those higher frequency, super high and very high frequency realms may be. It's not to say that there's not value there. There is. You can learn a lot. But that, I hope, does not come at the exception of getting on the HF bands, because the characteristics, the skills, just the whole wherewithal of being able to do that effectively just taps into, decades and generations of radio amateurs. And I just think it's a really important feature for people to learn how to get on the HF bands and to exercise that. So that's why we're going to focus a little bit on doing HF as part of our show, just because it'll make a practical example out of it.
Exactly. Actually demonstrating the tools, demonstrating how they work, the processes, like what is the protocol. Those are things that that they're not on the exam.
Right.
So yeah, actually seeing that stuff in action is so helpful.
Right. Well, great. So with that, Nick, I think we have we're going to bring the curtain down on our first show, and it's been as fun as I predicted it would be, and thanks to you as a great co-host. And I'm going to actually unshare my screen here, because I think it's going to allow me to hear you a little more easily. I sometimes lose your audio on my end, and I think it's me.
Yeah. Well, you're running that all that software for doing the QSO. You're running the video streaming. It's a lot.
Yeah. So what were you saying just a moment ago? Because I missed it.
I was just saying it's great to have the demonstration. The stuff's not on the exam, so it's really useful. I mean, it's useful for me to see this stuff in action. So I think it's really great content.
Great. Well, next month we've got more of this coming. We're going to have a guest for our special segment, our featured segment, and we'll have some updates to other events coming, and another 10-minute trainer with a double X Factor. And well, Nick, thank you. And this is going to get recorded and sent to our YouTube channel, and then we'll be updating our blog with the links and maybe other things. I don't know. So,
yep.
All right. Well, that's all for now. 7-3, and see you next time, if not before.
Yep. 7-3, everyone.